get me to stay away from that podium. We've got 2 mics going here. So let me thank you very much. First, Ken, thank you for putting this together, the organization for doing this, and for inviting me. Ken invited me to do this before the numbers started to rise in Iowa. And that showed, I don't know whether it was you had a premonition, but I greatly appreciate you making your organization and inviting everyone to be here to join us tonight for this town hall. I want to thank, of course, Shannon McGinley and Senator Jim Luther for doing what New Hampshirians do, take their time and make their decision. I remember when I first came to this state and had an opportunity to have a meeting with Governor Sununu, and we were talking about this and potentially getting into the race, and he said, don't pay any attention to the polls. He must have said it to me 3 or 4 times. He said, don't pay any attention to the polls. He says, New Hampshire will break late. And I'm sort of counting on that right now. Because the poll that, pre-Iowa poll that came out, we were a mere 39 points behind Governor Romney. But I have a feeling that's not going to end up that way. We're going to be picking up steam. We are picking up steam, and we feel very, very good about how things are going. And I love the opportunity to come to New Hampshire. I say this every venue I go because I've done well over 100 town hall meetings here in the state of New Hampshire. People say, well, what do you, when we won, I always say we won in Iowa, and I sort of think we sort of did win in Iowa. When we finished 8 votes apart when Governor Romney spent, I think, in the area of $2 million on television, and we spent $30,000 on television. 8 votes is a pretty big win, as far as I'm concerned. And you ask a lot of questions about what are you going to do? You know, you're going to New Hampshire, and what do you got going? You've been spending all your time in Iowa. I said, well, that's what I want to do Iowans to think. But I was spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. According to the Washington Post, when they looked at all the candidates and the number of events that we've done, and a lot of the folks up here will tell you that this is my 31st trip to the state of New Hampshire. And we've done well over 100 town hall meetings, and have gotten all over, we went to all 99 counties in Iowa, and I went to all 10 counties in New Hampshire. Including Coas, and I said it the right way. So, but it's been real great. New Hampshire, I love the Iowa town hall meetings and all those little small farming towns. But here in New Hampshire, it's a very different atmosphere. Politics and government is a full contact sport here because everybody is involved in it. You have just about everybody I meet in New Hampshire either was or is some sort of elected official. And true. Okay, let's just test. There's a lot of media from all over the world here. How many people were either before or now were an elected official in some capacity or not? Raise your hand. So, okay, well, we've got a lot of newcomers here. This is very unusual. I usually get a full load of hands. So that's, well, the bottom line is that you folks take citizenship really, really seriously. You really do participate, and you challenge your elected representatives because you believe in limited government, you believe in live free or die, and you want to make sure that you keep this special thing that is New Hampshire alive and well through your own local communities and your local involvement, as well as in the state. And so when a candidate comes to New Hampshire, you've got to be prepared for a marathon of questions, and I absolutely love it. Last night I was in Brentwood, and we had a packed house there, about 300 people that came in. They couldn't fit any more in, and we went on for almost 2 hours, and there were still lots of folks, and don't worry, I'm not going to do that to you, but I've got to do a television show. I think it's, I have to leave here around 9:15 or so, so you got me till then, and I'm happy to stay and take whatever questions. I just want to make a couple of points to you, and then open it up for any question that you want to ask. The couple of points are this. Number one, you fight very, very hard to be first in the nation. You scrap and you claw. Bill Gardner waits and holds every card as close to his can, to his vest, to make sure that no one sneaks ahead of New Hampshire. And with that privilege comes a responsibility. You have a responsibility to lead this country in making a recommendation to the rest of the country, because they're not getting the opportunity that you have, which is to really get a chance to individually shake hands, look folks in the eye, ask the questions, and in person get a chance to see not just what's up here or what's on a white page or what's on a website, but what's in here and what's in here. And so I would just say to you, take that responsibility, you know, seriously, but don't defer. Don't defer to pundits who will tell you, well, who's can win or who's the best candidate or how the matchup is. You have a responsibility, if you're first in the nation primary, to lead. And so that's what I would tell you to do. Lead. Don't follow the national polls or don't follow the pundits or the media. Lead. That's what New Hampshire has to do. Second, we have serious problems in this country. And we have a president who's simply not up to the task. We have a responsibility to put forward a candidate who can do what America needs to have done. If we put forward someone who might win, but can't do what America needs, it is a Pyrrhic victory. We have huge problems on the international scene. Huge problems. Obviously with our debt, our deficit, the size and scale of government, the dysfunction that is Washington, D.C. We have huge problems in our economy, getting it turned around and growing. And of course, we also have huge problems in this country generally on a variety of different fronts from our culture. We need a president who can stand up and clearly articulate the conservative vision, the founders' vision that made America exceptional. You hear a lot of talk about American exceptionalism. What is American exceptionalism? To me, it's codified in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. That's America. That's what makes America different than every other country in the world. We aren't ruled by the divine right of kings or bureaucrats or emperors or prime ministers or emirs. We are a country that has rights, that recognizes God-given rights to every person, and we set up a constitution with very limited powers in Washington, D.C., whose principal objective is to protect those rights and allow free people to pursue, using work, hard work, and family, and community, to build a great America from the bottom up. Many of you who are maybe as long in the tooth as I am, maybe they still read, I don't know, Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. Many read it in high school. It talked about America being this great country because we had great civic institutions and families and communities. We built this incredible enterprise from the bottom up. That's the values that our candidate for president has to espouse, because that's what makes America special and that's what made us great. And that's not what this president believes. He believes in top-down. He believes that the smart and the elite are best able to manage and organize people's lives. That the era of America, trusting free people, the average American, with the freedom to provide for themselves, is passé, because we now have smarter, better planners to be able to do these things more efficiently if we organize from above. That is the fundamental difference in this election. And we better have someone who can present that narrative boldly and solutions that are rooted in that narrative. People ask, why can't we get together? Why is it so divisive? Because we don't have a leader who, as Ronald Reagan said in his farewell address, the last thing he said to the American people, he was worried about whether we would instruct the next generations in who we are. That we would forget our founders. We would forget the foundations of this country and what made us great. And some of you may remember the Soviet Union. Remember what happened every time they had a new leader of the Soviet Union? They rewrote the history books. And they got rid of whoever was out of favor by that regime. Folks, they're rewriting the history books. And they're wiping out a lot of what America really is to try to change it to what some people want it to be. We're on the precipice of that happening with Obamacare. To me, that's the game changer. That's the death knell. Once every American becomes dependent upon the federal government for your life and your health, it's now no longer just the elderly and disabled who have programs that the federal government creates a nexus to. Those on the margins of society. Now it'll be everybody. In America, freedom, those basic values that make it exceptional. Barack Obama, about 8 months ago, in responding to Paul Ryan's budget, said this. He listed a whole host of entitlement programs. Everything from unemployment insurance to Medicare. And said, America is a better country because of these commitments. I'll go one step further. America was not a great country until these commitments. America was not a great country until we took money. The federal government took your money, created programs to redistribute it to those who they believed was better, who better could use it. And that's what made America a great country. Mr. President, that's what makes America like every other country. It's not what makes us a great country. Charge I would have. First, to lead. Second, be bold. Don't settle what isn't sufficient to do the job. Pick who you believe is the right person to take on that challenge, to defeat Barack Obama. Yes, but not with a hollow victory. With a victory that will actually get the things done that are necessary to accomplish. To make sure that the country that you were given by your ancestors, is the one that you will pass on to your generation, which is the duty of every generation in America. Lead and be bold. If you do that, you will do what I believe happened the last time we were in an election that was even close to as critical as this. It was 1980. We had a horrible economy, stagflation. We had our friends and allies who couldn't trust us around the world. And we had our enemies who did not fear us, like Iran, which was in the middle of a hostage crisis back in 1980. Here Iran is on the stage again. The economy is just as bad, if not much worse. And we have this election. Everyone said when I came to New Hampshire, why are you coming to New Hampshire? You're so conservative. You're conservative on all these issues. New Hampshire is a more moderate state. The Republicans are more moderate. And this is what I said back in 1980. Iowa chose George H.W. Bush. New Hampshire chose Ronald Reagan. I'm not going to say what your ideology is. It's as spread as probably most things. But New Hampshires do something. They look and they see what our country needs. And they put their vote behind what our country needs at the time. That's what leaders do. They look to see what's necessary, and they do what's needed. And so I would ask that you do what's necessary and give this country and this party an opportunity to have that bold contrast of visions for our country with someone who is unabashed and unafraid to fight for the principles that make this country great. I'll be happy to take your questions.
We have a program here where we've got some questions from people of our group and some other liberty-minded groups. Paul Therian, would you mind grabbing the microphone from up there?
You want me to start it?
Start us off.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Senator, let me introduce myself. I'm Paul Therian.
Hold the mic up, Paul.
Since 1980, third generation Marine.
Thank you for your service.
This question was handed to me when I came in this evening. I believe this is probably one of the most serious questions to be asked. I love my country, but I'm afraid of my government. And this question, I think, will explain why I just made the statement. Ben Franklin said, "He who would trade liberty for some temporary security deserves neither liberty nor security." The Congress just passed, and President Obama just signed into law, the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. This law contains a provision that would authorize the detention of American citizens in the United States without charge and would allow them to be held indefinitely, the first step to totalitarianism. George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley agrees that under Section 1031, this law, quote, offers no exemption for American citizens from the authorization to use the military to indefinitely detain people without charge or trial, end quote. Sir, in your opinion, should the United States government have this power to detain without charge and to imprison indefinitely American citizens on American soil?
Thank you very much. The current state of the law prior to the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, was that a person who was not a citizen of this country could be detained here in this country without charge if the government determined that they were at war with the United States, taking up arms against the United States. The case for a United States citizen was that if someone was arrested, detained by the military, or held by the military, who was a United States citizen, that they could not be held indefinitely without charge unless they had the right, this person being held, to something called habeas corpus. In other words, the right to go to federal court with a lawyer provided by the government for them, like any other citizen, and have a case, a trial, a hearing, better put, before a federal judge, where the government would have to make the case that this person, by a preponderance of the evidence, was in fact engaged in the activity that they would claim to be engaged in. That is the state of the law prior to the signing of the National Defense Authorization. When I inquired about this, because I got questions about this in the past, I called a senator and I asked them, what are you guys doing? Because it seems like you're changing the law. What he told me was, what they intended to do was not change the law because it was a court ruling as opposed to a statute. The state of the law was determined by courts, not by a statute. They wanted to put that court ruling into a statute. And from what I hear from people, it is not clear that those rights attach. I would simply say that under my administration, we will make it very clear that no American citizen can be held without first having the right to go to court and then be adjudicated to be, in fact, a threat to the country. But if, in fact, they are a threat to the country and a court so finds, then I think we have a right to hold them. That person still has a right to go back to the court and, with another petition, and so on, just like any other person in America. So that's what I understand is that the current state of the law is before the National Defense Authorization Act, and I would maintain the current state of the law.
Hello, thank you. Our next question is going to come from Bill McNally.
Good evening, Senator. Thanks for coming to Windham. My question is on Agenda 21. It's also referred to as ICLEI, or ICLEI, or the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It is a United Nations plan that openly targets America's sovereignty, including the ownership of private property, small arms, and privately owned farms. It also promotes the redistribution of wealth under the guise of, quote, social justice, unquote. Using mechanisms like the public-private partnerships, can you please describe what Agenda 21 is, what it means to America, and how would you defend America's sovereignty against such international intrusions? Thank you.
Well, let me start out small and try out large and try to drill it down. There's a lot of things that the United Nations promulgates through their various agencies and committees, most of which are completely unhelpful from the standpoint of how our country should be ordered and operated. One of the things that I have suggested is that the United Nations does serve some purpose, and I put in parentheses some purpose with respect to security issues. But with respect to most everything else, it is more problematic with respect to the benefits to the world, and particularly the benefit to the United States and our allies, than it is beneficial. So I have said that we will go through each one of those agencies, and I'm not going to say we will remove ourselves from all of them. We will remove ourselves from many of them. We are not going to give legitimacy to UN organizations that are out there promulgating ideas, and we can all give a laundry list of those ideas, everything from climate to abortion to other types of rights that the international community believes in. I'm not going to, as president, have our country participate in things that are antithetical to our values, and this is one. And they have all sorts of agendas, in my opinion, with respect to what they're trying to do to impose international rule, international law on the sovereignty of the United States. And we have to be vigilant, whether it's the UN rights of the child, for example, which is another horrific intrusion upon parents and their ability to be able to raise their children. So Agenda 21 is just one of many things that the UN tries to put forth in order to get their worldview imposed on not just the United States, but countries around the world. My feeling about Agenda 21 in particular is that is something that, as president, we will make sure that there is absolutely no federal cooperation or involvement in any way other than helping communities, helping or ensuring that communities do not have such things imposed upon them by anybody else of outside. If communities want to look at Agenda 21 and say, well, we like this idea, we want to do it, that's not the federal government's purview. That's a local community issue. But if it goes beyond that, then I think the federal government may have some role to play. But I will certainly not be advocating for any of those things.
Thank you very much. We have a Windham High School student, Rebecca Connolly.
Hi. As a high school senior, this will be my first election that I'll be participating in.
Congratulations.
And because of that, I've been doing a lot of information on all the candidates. And my question to you would be, how do you feel bringing the American government and law back to a state of more Judeo-Christian values would resonate with an American people whose values are much more diverse than they were when our country was first founded?
Well, I got a similar question today, speaking speaking to a group of students. What's the motto of the United States?
I almost said live free or die.
No, that's close. That's the motto obviously here. What's the motto of the United States? E pluribus unum. E pluribus unum. I said that at an earlier talk with a group of students. And I said, what's that mean? And a man yelled out of one, many.
He was a Democrat.
I kid you not. He yelled out of one, many. Which reminded me of a debate I had with Howard Dean. You remember him. About 2 years ago at Northwestern University, Howard and I were together. We had a cordial little debate. And he was asked the question, what's the greatest virtue of America? And he said, diversity. The greatest virtue of America is diversity. And I reminded him of what the motto was of the United States. That the greatest virtue of America is that people who are diverse can come together and be one. E pluribus unum, out of many one. America is not an ethnicity. We are not a culture based on ethnic heritage. Thousands of years, in most cases, with our European brothers and sisters. Hundreds of years, anyway. Thousands, and over 1,000 in most cases. No. We're a country that was founded not by tribal ethnicity, like Europe, but by what? An ideal, value, a common set of principles that make us American. My grandfather, as you probably know, came to this country, came from Italy, he brought my dad. I made the argument, and he made the argument to me, that when he came to this country, the first day he was here, because he left Mussolini's Italy, it was a top-down, oppressive, fascist regime. He came to this country because he wanted to come to a country that believed in him. He wanted to come to a country that would allow him to be free, to work, reap the fruits of his labor, raise his family, teach them the faith that was central to his life. He came here because America represented something. And he knew that when he came here, from the day he was there, he was an American. Why? Because he accepted what America is. That beacon of hope. That common set of values that says we have our rights from God. Not any God. That's what our founders believed. These rights came from the Judeo-Christian God, from the God of Western civilization that built Western civilization. We mark our time from the birth of this man, Jesus Christ. We don't even realize, most people who go through our life don't even realize how much of our society is based on these tenets and teachings. And we understand here in America that these rights, the dignity of every human life. Do you think other cultures hold up every human life, men and women, as equal? Let me assure you, they do not. Children and parents, children and adults as equal, they do not. We have the dignity of all human life. Equality. Equality? These are unique concepts that are American, based on our roots of having those rights from a creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what America is. Do we have people who have different ideas? Yes. Are they allowed in the public squares to make their arguments? Absolutely. James Madison talked about how America is a great country because everybody can come into the public square make their case, have it out, and then we form a consensus. And we can get along. That's, if you think about what our Constitution is about, what our country is about, and what a government is, it's how people who are diverse are able to come together and be one. Not necessarily agree on every issue, but agree that we can work things out and we can go on together, even though there may be disagreements. And so there is, and I think this is a legitimate point, and I think I made this earlier, there is a real choice that is developed over time. I would agree with you that there are many in this country today who don't buy this argument that we are an exceptional country because we are based on these founding principles, that we need a new model. They have every right to come into the public square and make that claim. They have every right to try to change America. I would make the argument that Barack Obama is one of those people. That he wants to fund, when he said in New Hampshire, hope and change, he meant it. Change. He meant change. Barack Obama was asked whether he believes in American exceptionalism. And he answered the question as follows. I believe in American exceptionalism like the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism and the British believe in British exceptionalism. So, there really isn't anything different, except I just happen to be an American and I sort of, love my own country. It's like rooting for the Steelers. Sorry. Go Steelers! Steeler Nation. All right. They're out there, they're just quiet because you guys are not nice to us. Particularly on the field lately. But anyway, that's another story. But that's the difference, right? There is a difference between a worldview that America is nothing special. In fact, it's broken and has been, as this president has basically said. You'll read his speech in Kansas. He talks about how, this individualism and this way the economy functions just doesn't work anymore, if it ever did. So we're talking about fundamental differences. Do you have a right, does anybody have a right who has a different view of who we are, what America should be? Go for it. But I think what a president should do is actually lay out the vision, that common vision, and try to explain why that is important for the future of our country. Because with that common vision of free people, limited government, rights to each and every one of you, directly from God, that the government cannot crush, cannot intervene. That's a pretty good model that's worked for a long time. When we say, no, maybe some of those rights go to the government. Maybe some of those rights are collective. And that we can, in fact, and do, in fact, sort of limit what rights. Because we want to make sure you're secure. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. It's a trade-off. People believe that. They have a right to. But I don't think that's necessarily that we, as conservatives, are best at advocating. I think we're advocating for a country that transformed the world. I always remind people at the time of 1776, the average life expectancy in America was 35, as it was at the time of Jesus Christ. We were an agrarian society, as it was at the time of Jesus Christ. Oh, a little bit more sophistication in our agrarian society, but we were an agrarian society. And then America happened. Freedom happened. Individual freedom happened. And we built this incredible country. And life expectancy is now close to 80. We went through an industrial and technology revolution. The poorest person in America today, from the standpoints of creature comforts, is wealthier than the wealthiest person 50 years ago, not even 100 years ago.